Everyone, welcome to tonight's webinar. I am Bunny Gates and I'm going to be your presenter today. Anna is going to man the question box, so if you have any questions you type them in, then she's taking care of that for us, so bless her heart, we love her dearly. Alright, so let's get started. We're going to do our webinar tonight on quilting. And just so you know, the instructions are not ready quite yet. It's a really lengthy one. I wanted to give you a lot of different things. So it's got, I think, 4 different parts to the instructions. So I'm going to go through a bit of it tonight. Not complete step-by-steps, or we'd be here a lot longer than an hour. So some of the toolbars and things that we're going to be using is we'll be using the main menu bar, and I've put little stars over the parts that we are going to be using in our project tonight. So we're going to use from the main menu bar, File, Edit, View, and Tools. From the, oh, it's not clicking, come on. Here we go. From the standard toolbar, we're going to be using Save, Copy, Paste. Undo is one of those things that, even though it's not in the instructions, I use it a lot. So I can't get through anything without using undo at least once. Tools toolbar, that is going to be to the left side of your workspace. We're going to be using our selection tool. I'll be using rectangular selection a lot. Drawing tools, I'm going to be using a lot. And create shapes. We're going to be using quite a few different shapes out of here for this project. Auto border and auto sequence control. Any of these that look like they're pretty long here, these are flyout menus. So what you're going to see is only one line of icons there to use. If there's a flyout menu available, if you look really close here, there's a little black triangle in the bottom right-hand corner. If there's a flyout menu, if you put your cursor on it, hold your left mouse button down, this little menu here flies out. Then you just take your cursor along and stop at the one you're going to want to use, and that'll be the one and then shows up over in the icon to choose. So we're going to be using, especially in the create shapes, we're going to be using quite a few of those different shapes. So I did want you to know how you would find those. The align bar toolbar, we're going to be using a couple of those out of there. I don't know about you, but I love the alignment tools because it sure makes it a whole lot easier for me to be accurate and quick at getting there. And the tool options toolbar, we're going to be changing the width and height of things, and we'll use the proportional option as well. The thread palette toolbar is really an important part of the whole process, and we do use it a lot in one of the quilt blocks that I'm going to use. So up here in the top box is all of the colors that are available to use in the design that you're working on. And there's a lot of them. What you would do is there's a little arrow on the side here that you click on it and it advances more colors. So that's how you get to other colors in the palette. On the bottom box, this is where any colors that you have in your design will show up down here, and that's how you know what colors you've already used. This first one here, this one is wonderful. There's an X through it. This is how, and we are going to be using this one as well a lot, if you have a design that has a fill stitch and an outline on it, if you only want maybe the fill stitch, to delete the outline, I would just put my cursor in the top left-hand corner and click, and that will delete the outline. If I want to delete the fill stitch, I go in the bottom right-hand corner, and that's how you delete either the outline or the fill. Same thing for up here on your thread palette. To pick a color, if I wanted a color for my outline, I'm going to click in the top left hand corner of that box, and that will change the color or given color to my outline. The bottom right hand is for the fill stitch. So we're going to be using the thread palette toolbar quite a bit as we go along as well. Object properties pane, that's going to be to the right hand side of your workspace, and we'll be changing a few things in there as well. The project that I've done for today is this wall hanging here. I've done a square with applique in it, and it has quite a bit more than just applique, but that was my focus for that, and then I just kept adding to it. The center one is Trapunto. That's where you've got the cushiony look to it, because it's got batting right in the tree shape on this one and the tree trunk. And then the bottom one is, I call it stitch and flip, because I'm going to stitch a piece down and then I'm going to flip it to the right side so you see it but not see that seam I sewed. If you've ever done paper piecing, this is kind of like paper piecing, but it's done in a hoop. So, and I will go through the steps on how you would do all of those. So the first block that I'm going to go through tonight is the applique, and you can see from the picture I've added the garland to it and the star on the top, and then of course I've got glitz going on there. And I don't know if you can see this part. I can see it on my screen. I hope you can see it on yours. This is a quilt design that is quilting all of my layers together. So it's quilting the top fabric, the batting, and the backing all together. So that's kind of how I put my quilts together. You know, Mother, when she did hers, and Grandma used to tie them with yarn, and we do pretty embroidery designs instead of that now to hold ours together. With applique, when we're creating in here, we're going to create for a cut line, and if you've got, well, the Artistic Suites, we can actually do our applique to where we can take that cut line and we can use the cutting blades on our embroidery machine to cut our shape out. So we could do that. I did not do mine that way this time. I actually did it to where I tacked my fabric down and then I trimmed with the scissors around it. So I did it a little bit differently. I was using lots of scrap fabrics. I can also, with the Artistic Suites, I can create a cut to take to my Zing or my Silhouette Cameo cutters, and I can cut those pieces out with those cutters. So there's a lot of different ways. The way I did it this time around was to trim in place. Then it needs a placement line to show you actually where to put your fabric. So I would put my fabric down, I'd tack it down, I would trim with my little scissors, and then I would finish it off with a satin finishing line. So there's always more than one way to do anything. This is just the way I chose tonight to do this. All right, so I'm going to go to the software and I'm going to show you how I created all of the applique part on this. So if you will just give me a second here. All right, so when you open up your software, it first of all goes to this new design box, and we are going to create new. I'm going to click on next. And it takes us to our fabric box. I am using embroidery smooth cotton 2 because my fabric is a cotton fabric. You can see there's lots of different choices. I'm going to click on next, and I want to do a new graphic. I'm not going to get anything from a file. I'm not going to choose any embroidery designs. Right now I just want to create a new graphic, and then I'm going to click on finish. Now I'm ready to start creating. The first thing I want to create is the outline for my tree. So I'm going to I'm going to go over here on my tools toolbar, and remember those shapes I was talking about? Right now I have create star shape. It's got that little fly out menu, so I'm going to hold my mouse button and I'm going to choose the trapezoid. Now when that comes up, if I was going to go ahead and now drag this into a shape, it would be a trapezoid, but I don't really want my tree to be cut off at the top. So if I go up under tool options, can you see where it says slant? I'm going to change that 50% to 100%. Now when I come down here and I drag a shape, you can see it now is a triangle. So there's a lot of different, even though it says trapezoid, we can change that by changing the slant. Now I want to go up under my tools toolbar and click on rectangle selection. If I don't click onto that, I'm just going to be making more of those triangles. I don't really want more, so I'm going to tell the software I'm done making them, this is what I want. So now I want to size this. The easiest way for me is I want to deselect proportional, and over here in my width I want to change that to 8.5, and in height I want to change that to 8. And mine is inches. If yours is in millimeters, then you need to figure out what that figure is, and I have a little chart where I hit my calculator. And you can also go into your software, you know, and change that from inches to millimeters or millimeters to inches. So whatever works easiest for you. Okay, so I've changed those figures here. Now to make sure that they both take effect on it, I want to touch the enter button on my keyboard, and that finishes that process for me. Now I want to delete the fill because I really only want to outline on this. And remember on the bottom in my palette, that first square, if I click in the bottom right corner, it will delete my fill stitch. Now I do want to change the color. Everything comes into my software when I'm creating like this as this navy blue color. So I want to choose something different for this. Now when I was doing the instructions, I chose colors for you only because I didn't want you to get confused as you went along, especially when I get into one that does a lot of different lines, like the stitch and flip. That's going to have a lot, you're going to be building a lot of lines in there. So I'm just going to choose one right here at the first that I know I'm not using. Okay, so that's pretty much kind of what I do. And if it's something I need to go back and keep track of those colors, then I have a little cheat sheet. I just write them down as I go. Okay, so now I want to create the tree trunk. So I'm going to come over here on the side, and this little icon here, it says create outline shape. Remember, it has a flyout menu, so if you need to, you're going to use the flyout menu and find that create outline shape. I like this particular tool for making my lines. So I'm going to come over here. I want to go right up above this bottom line for my tree. So I'm just going to click just a little bit above it, left click. Now, I don't want this to be a curve. If I click again, it's going to be a curve. If I hold my shift key down and click, it's going to be a straight line. Then I'm going to let it go. Now it is still attached. I want it to be unattached, so now I'm going to right click, and that tells it that I'm done doing that line. Go up to my rectangle selection, and it goes ahead and selects that for me. I'm going to change the color of that right now, and I'm just going to pick this one right here. Not really paying attention right now to the colors I'm doing because we just want to get through this. Okay, so now up here in tool options, I want that to be a height of 1.5 inches. So I'm just going to go up here and type in 1.5 and then enter on my keyboard. and that finishes that. Up here on my standard toolbar, I have my little icons for copy and paste. I want to copy, and then I want to paste. I want another side to my tree trunk, so doing that, then I can come down here and move that over. Well, didn't do it, so let me try it again. Copy, paste. There it is. Not sure why it didn't do it the first time. All right, then we're going to just move it over. I don't worry about are they even, you know, am I going straight over? We're going to fix that right now. So I'm going to select both of them. So this one's selected. If I put my cursor close, you can see that highlighted that one. I'm going to hold my control key and click onto that one. Now I have them both selected. And I'm going to go up here to my align bar, and look, I have align top. If I click into that, it now made them both the same height. And if I zoom in a little, you would be able to see that. They're just a little bit above this bottom line for my tree, which is exactly what I wanted. Because when we do applique, if you have layers, one layer needs to be over another. So my tree trunk is going to be the first thing that I'm going to build into applique, and then my tree would cover that tree trunk. So that's why I'm doing it this way. All right, now I also want to combine these two together. So again, I'm going to select them both, and I'm going to right-click on the workspace, and when I get this dialog box up, you can see that I now can combine these. Makes it work as one now. It's going to kind of hold those together to where one can't get out of whack with the other. I also want to change the width between the two of them to 1.5. So I'm going to come up under here and type in 1.5 and enter on the keyboard. And that kind of pushed them a little bit a ways from each other. Now this time I want to select the tree and the tree trunk, and you'll see why in just a moment. I'm going to go up under Edit, Select All, and you can see that next to Select All, can you see where it says Control A? Control A is a shortcut key. So as you go through here, you'll see a lot of them have shortcut keys. I don't use them when I'm teaching because it may confuse you. Sometimes it just gives more information. What I suggest to people is to start learning maybe one or two at a time. When you get that down to where you know what those shortcut keys are, then choose another one or two to start practicing to learn those. And you'll save yourself a lot of time by learning what those shortcut keys are. But if you don't, not a problem. Just go to Edit, Select All. Now we have our tree and our tree trunk. And I'm going to go back up to the Align bar, and I want to align centers vertically. Remember, we combined the two lines for our tree trunk, so this is going to work out perfectly. Kind of move that trunk over to the right a little bit so it is centered perfectly with the tree. If I didn't combine these two sides for the tree trunk, they would have ended up right on top of each other because they would have been aligned centered. So that's why we combined those. Now we can also move that over here inside of our hoop, and I do the garland for it. Trapunto part too, to make it a little pillowy look instead of just one big fat spot on my tree. So to do that, again, I'm going to come over here to my Create Outline Shape, click onto that, and then I'm going to start down here in the right lower corner of my tree. I'm going to do a left click. I'm going to add 5 lines to my tree. So I'm kind of building them up toward the top. So I'm going to come over here to the side. I'm going to hold my shift key down, click, come over here, click, 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 and click, and then right click. Then I'm going to go over to my rectangle selection, and I'm going to give it a new color. So in the top left hand part of a box, and I'm using colors that I haven't used anywhere in my design already. So you'll see that we're going to be putting a lot of colors in here as we go along. And now I want to do an outline for my block. There's a couple different reasons why we're going to do an outline. My main reason when I'm doing a block, other than the Trapunto one, is that I can square up my quilt block after it's stitched out, because sometimes it pulls a little or whatever. These didn't so much because they're applique and open. They're not, you know, heavy filled in designs. But it kind of helps when you're going to go for a certain size for your block. Once I have the outline done, then when I'm done stitching my block, I can take it over to my cutting table and I cut 1/4 of an inch and put my ruler right down on that line and cut 1/4 of an inch outside of it, and then I know exactly that I am squared up perfectly. So I love to do an outline to my blocks. All right, so I'm going to create a rectangle around my block. So I'm going to go up to my Tools toolbar, and I'm going to use one of my shapes for this. So again, I need my flyout menu. I'm going to go over here to my Create Rectangle, and now I can drag a box, and let me zoom out a little bit here, around my tree and my trunk. And really it doesn't matter what size because we're going to resize it anyway, so don't worry about it. We're going to do our rectangle selection, delete the fill stitch, and we're going to make sure that we haven't selected proportional. We're going to change our width to 8.5, and the height I want at 10, and enter on the keyboard. Now I would be ready, because this block as it is what I'm going to use for all 3 of the blocks, because I really wanted all my trees to be the same size, the same shape, everything to be pretty much the same, just a different technique in each one of them. So I'm going to now go up under File, Save As, and find where I want to save it, where I can get back to it fast. And I'm just going to save this as tree block. What the heck? Let's make it easy. And I'm saving this as a draw file. And I think as we go along, I'll be showing you why I'm going to change that to a draw file. And we're going to go on Save. And up here on this tab up here above my workspace, it now shows me, instead of saying untitled, it now shows me what I named it. And we'll be using those tabs as well, so it's good to know. All right, so now we're ready to actually create the applique. I'm going to start with the tree trunk down here. So I want to select the trunk, and I want to go over here on my Tools toolbar, and second from the bottom is Auto Border. I'm going to click on Auto Border, and the dialog box comes up. I need to use this dialog box a few different times to build the different, remember we have to have a placement, a tack down, the finishing stitches. So we're going to go here, and I want to the inside. I'm going to do my distance at 0.4, and this is millimeters. I'm going to leave the repeat at 1. Under type, I want a running stitch because I want this to be a straight stitch. And I'm going to click on OK. Now, other than the fact that I tell you it's there, you have no clue. So if we go at the bottom over here in our Tools toolbox, it says Auto Sequence Control. If we click onto that, we get the Run Optimizer Once box come up. I'm going to click on Advanced, and I'm going to click on OK. And over here in our sequence box, it now shows me the different layers that we have built on our tree. So I want to rearrange mine a little bit because I really want the block to be after the tree and the trunk. It can be, I don't care if it's before or after the garland, so I'm just going to pick it and put it there. Did you see how easy that was to rearrange the order of how it was going to stitch? I just clicked on it and dragged it where I wanted it and let it go. So now we have our tree, we have the tree trunk, we have the outline for our block, we have our garland, and we have our auto border trunk that we had done. It's exactly what we wanted. All right, so now I need to select the tree trunk, the original tree trunk. So the second layer, and if I click on it over here, it selects it here. So this is really handy to have because otherwise we don't know if we would be clicking the first one that we put in or if we'd be selecting the one that we did the auto border on. So using the sequence layers here really makes it easy. Okay, so now we've done that, we need to go back over to our auto sequence or auto border. Now we're going to go to the outside. I want to change this to 0.6. And again, I want a running stitch. And click on OK. Now, one more, you know what I didn't do? I did not change the color. So let me change the color of that one. I'm just going to pick this little pinky color here. Did I change the color on that one? I don't think I did. So let me change it right now. Isn't this handy that we can do this now? That's what the layers do for me. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to this second layer because now I need to create the finishing stitch, the satin stitch in this case that I want on it. So back over here to my auto border, and this time I want the distance to be 0. And what that's going to do is that satin stitch is going to go over both of those lines, the one to the inside and the one to the outside that I created. It's going to satin stitch over them. So those lines are kind of holding it in place, and it's going to really turn out nice. So we need to also go down here. We want satin serial and width 2.5 millimeters. And then we're going to click on OK, and it adds our satin stitch to it. And again, we need to change the color. And the trunk is now done. That would take care of the trunk. Now we would be ready to repeat those same steps for the tree. I'll do one. Actually, I'll just do the satin part of it. You know, in the instructions, they will tell you how to step by step do the tree. So let me just choose color number 1, and I'm going to come over here to auto border, and we're going to pretend I did the inside stitch, then we did the outside stitch. Now we're doing this satin serial, and we're doing OK. And then we're going to change the color. All right. I would now be ready to, we now have our apple. I like my garland to be a pretty stitch. So I want to choose my garland, my zigzaggy stitch there. Over here in Object Properties, we have some choices for that stitch. Right now it's a running stitch. It's telling us that right here. If I go under Styles and I chose number 157, and I would play with these. Actually, I did play with them. It took me a long time to choose which one, but I chose this one because it's a star and I thought it looked really nice for the Christmas season, and it kind of goes with the star when we're done. Now I also changed the length of it, so you want to click, put a check mark in length, and then we can actually change the length over here. So I wanted it to be 6 millimeters because I wanted it big enough to show really well. And then if I enter on my keyboard, I now have these stars. Isn't that cute? So much fun. All right, so now I am ready. I want a star on the top of my tree. It's going to be an embroidered star. So let me zoom out a little bit here. I'm going to come over here to my shapes again and use the flyout menu, and the star is all the way over here to the right. Now I can create a star. So just go ahead and drag a star, and up here in the tool options I can change the number of rays. I don't want 6, I really only want 5, so I'm going to just use my down arrow here, and it changed it to 5. I'm going to go to my rectangle selection to tell it I'm done creating stars, and I want to change, it has a fill stitch and it has an outline stitch. I know that because, not because I can see the outline, but here on the bottom of our thread palette, can you see there's a little bucket in this cayenne color, and there's a little pencil in the navy blue? That means that the pencil is an outline. The bucket is a fill. I'd like them both to be the same color, so I would pick a gold color for this. To do them both the same color, I'm going to click in the top and I'm going to click in the bottom. Now, if you look on our thread palette down here, you can see the pencil and the bucket are in the same block. So you know that our star is now the same color, outline, and fill. So now I would be ready to move that on top of my tree. And I did overlap it quite a bit. And because I did not want the stitches behind my star to go away, which usually when you do applique, you want the overlaps to go away. In this case, because this is such a small stitch and everything, I really didn't want it to. It wanted to leave a little bit of a gap or something there. Whatever it was, I didn't like it that well. So I'm going to go over to remove overlaps here in my object properties, and I'm going to choose never. Now that doesn't mean that for everything else it's going to be never, because when I go to create a new anything up here, if I want never, I would have to go back down here and tell it that. So I kind of like that it's not something I have to remember, because usually I want the remove overlaps. All right, so now you can see that my outline is definitely too low. And really, I do want the bottom of my tree trunk outside of my outline of my block. So I'm going to just select my block, and I'm going to move it up here a little bit, and then I'm going to show you what I'm doing. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more for you. On your outline block, let me move that, we have different little things, like on the corners. If I put it right here, I can see 2 arrows kind of going in opposite directions. If I hold my left mouse button down, it would change the size of that. If I move this to where I have the little circle with the little arrow on the end, that means I can rotate it with that. I don't want to do either one of those things, but I wanted you to know it's there. This one in the center here would also size it, but I'm going to actually use that just to line it up with the tip of my star here, and that's how I'm going to center it. And if I move my mouse until I see 4 arrows going in 4 different directions, I know that that is my move signal. I'm going to hold my left mouse button down and just scooch it over until my little center is above the star a little ways. I'm going to be putting some crystals around that star, so I want to leave a little bit of distance there. But you'll be able to see now that my tree trunk is going to be outside of the block, which is exactly what I want, because I didn't want it to just suddenly stop. So that's actually going to be sewn into the seam line when I put my borders around this block. All right, so now I'm still not done. I would like to have some ornaments on the tree as well. So again, over here to my Create Shapes, hold that down, and I want the Create Ellipse. Then I can come over here and zoom in again. Love my zoom button. And I'm just going to drag a circle, let it go, choose my rectangle selection. I'm going to this time have it proportional, and then I can change the width or the height, and it will do it proportionately. I'm going to type in 0.5 and enter on the keyboard. Now it's changed the size. I'm going to come down here and choose a color that I haven't used in any of the design before, and I need it to be a fill stitch, and again an outline. So I'm going to click there and click in the other, and now it's all one color. These colors are ugly, and I apologize, but you don't have time for me to go through and try to find pretty colors. You're going to do that. All right, so now I want more of those on my tree. I'm going to go up, and I'm going to go up here on my standard toolbar, click on Copy, click on Paste, and I'm going to again make sure I have my little, well, it's just not cooperating tonight, is it? Copy, paste. There, we got it. Okay, so now I have those two. I want more, of course. So I'm going to go back up on paste. I'm not going to have to click on copy each time, just paste. Make sure that you see those 4 arrows when you put your cursor in that box there, and then that's your signal that you can move it. Paste, move it, paste, and you can see it's pasting over the one that we had copied. Each time it's moving it back up there. Move it and paste, move it. And then, and of course, you can always, if you don't like where you've gotten them, which I always take a little bit of time to do all that, but you get the idea of that. So now we have all of that completed. We would be ready now to combine all of these ornaments. So I'm going to start at the top because it's easier for me to collect them all. So I'm going to select that one. I'm going to hold my control key down and just start going down the tree, selecting as I go until I have them all. Then I'm going to right click and I'm going to combine them. And now instead of having a layer for each ornament, I have one layer for the group of them. All right. And now I would go up under File, Save As, and I would save this as my decorated tree or applique tree. Whatever you can do it whatever way you'd like. Just easier to go ahead and keep creating them and then put them all on one USB stick and take them to the machine. Okay, so that takes care of the applique. Oh, no it doesn't. I wanted to add a little bit of glitz around my star. So I'm going to show you how we would do that really quick, because it really is a fast thing to do. We need to select our star. I'm going to go back to my auto border, and in this box now I do want it to the outside. The distance I want at 3 millimeters, and I want this to be a running stitch. Click on OK, and now we have a nice outline around our star. I'm going to go over here to my object properties, and you can see that is a running stitch. I want it to be crystals, so I'm going to click on crystals. Down here in the color/shape is where I can tell it what color I want. I'm just going to click on a pretty color. I also need to choose my size, and I wanted mine to be 10 millimeters, so I just would choose 10. Come down here under spacing, and I chose 2.5 millimeters, and you can see I have crystals around. Now, if you wanted to move some of those crystals, which if they're too close together, you're going to have to. These actually don't look too bad, except for right here, they're a little close. On the one I did, I had to move these in closer because I wanted them close to the star without being on top of the star. So we're going to separate to crystals, and then we still have to come over here, right click and ungroup. That way, instead of all moving at one time, then we need to deselect, and then we can select one at a time, and then we can scooch them in where we want them. So I would go around and do that to all of them. This one I might move down a little further. However yours ends up coming up, you just move them around until you like the look that you get. Now, when you get that done, I want to take this to my cutter, either my Zing or my Silhouette Cameo, and I want to create a template for my crystals. And then when my embroidery is all done, I can take it over to the ironing board, I can put my crystal template down, and I can press my crystals in place instead of trying to set them all by hand where you want them and hope they don't move on you. So I would go, when I'd ready, go to File, Export to Crystal/Cutters, and then the box comes up, and you can see right now, if I was going to go with this, you can see the template right here that you would end up with. And again, that'll be in your instructions, so you'll be able to do that as well. All right, so that pretty much takes care of that. Now we're going to, let me show you what the second block is going to be before I get here. So give me just a second here. And all right, so this is the Trapunto block, and you can see that it's pretty fluffy all through here, and I do have glitz on it because I didn't want to flatten my puffiness out by embroidering the ornaments onto it. So that would be important as well. So let's go back to the software and I'll show you how we're going to do that. All right, so I'm going to go up under New, or you could go to File, New, and I'm going to, again, it's still on Cotton 2, that's where I want it, so Next, New Graphic, and Finish. Now, this is why I have the draw file, so that because the outline that we had for our tree is now turned into our decorated tree. So now I need to go up here where it says Open, and actually instead of going to New, I could have just gone to Open, sorry. And I'm going to find where I put that, and it's in this first folder, and tree block draw. Remember how I had you save it as a draw file? That's so that I can just click on that, open it up, and there's our tree. And it did come up. Let me just get rid of the untitled. Comes up. So now we have our decorated tree that we did, and we have our tree block again. It's always wise to save things as you go along. And sometimes when I'm saving, maybe I'm not sure that I'm going to end up with that particular thing as what I want. If you save it as a different name, sometimes then you can actually go back to the one that you started with. So that's why I do this one. This is our block for all three. I can go get that again for each block. All right, so for the Trapunto, I want to first of all select my tree trunk. Remember how I had you, let me zoom in here, I had that go up into the tree here because in Applique we layer things. Well, this is Trapunto. I don't want it to go up under the tree because that will actually show. So what I want to do is just bring it down here and have it be either a little bit below the line or right on the line. When you have that, that'll be good because when we're done you'll see why. So now I want to save this right now as I go. I'm going to go up under File, Save As, and this one I'm going to name Trapunto and save. Again, that way I don't have to worry about going back. Now, I really don't want to do anything. I really only want outlines for my tree and the tree trunk because they're going to be fat. I also want this to be a little bit longer, again, because I want it to come below my line here. So I'm just going to, I don't want it a whole lot longer, but just a little bit. Whoops. All right, just a little bit. All right. Now, I want to not do anything to the tree itself, but I want something around the tree. Normally, if I do Trapunto, I will do like a stipple stitch all the way around it. Well, I wanted to do something a little bit different than what I usually do, so I want to do a net fill. So we need to go back over to our Create Outline Shapes. I'm going to click onto that. I want it outside of the tree, but inside of my block outline. So I'm going to click into this corner here where the two pieces meet. Again, hold your Shift key, and I'm going to click into this corner, all the way over, click in this corner, click in this corner. Now I'm going to go up to the top of the tree and then down to that corner. And right away it fills up. I'm going to right click. I'm not done yet, so I'm going to come down here on the bottom of the tree, hold my Shift key, and I'm going to go all the way around right next to the tree trunk, back to this corner, back here, and I'm ending on the one that I started on. Right click, and then we're going to do the same thing over here. Shift key, click, 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 end on the one I started on. Right click, and now I'm done, so I'm going to go up and go to my rectangle selection, and that tells the software that I am done creating my shapes here. So now I want to go over to my Object Properties box, and the only one that I have selected right now is this one here. I want them all selected because I want it to all to do that. So let's go and hold the Control key down, and we're going to select all of that. Over here under my Fill tab, see we have two tabs, one for the fill, one for the outline. I want to go to my Fill tab, And now I can tell it I want a net fill. I also wanted the squares on my net fill to be kind of large. I didn't want them so tiny. So I wanted to go to cell size and type in 6 millimeters. Down here again, remove overlaps. I wanted it never for this. And then I'm going to enter on a keyboard. I want to come down here because it's got that fill and the outline. I want to get rid of the outline. Up in the top left-hand corner, the first box, I now got rid of the outline. And can you see now I have a net fill on there? So it's going to do all those little lines when it's stitching, and that's going to finish off my block. I really liked it when it was done. I thought it really showed up well. Now I need to add my star, because you know I want my star on this one too. So if I go back to my decorated tree tab, because remember we didn't close it out, we left it there. I can click on it. I can select both of those by getting, I don't want to select the outline here, so I'm going to above it. Just cover all of that, let it go. I can now go up under copy, go back to my Trapunto tab, click on paste, now somewhere along the lines my outline got a little bit too big, but it did work when I followed my instructions. So that's how we would put the star on there. Not sure what happened to my outline, my block thing. Let's see. That's why. It changed from my 10 to my 8.5. Not sure why, but the instructions, when I followed the instructions, I didn't have any trouble there. So if you have trouble, you go ahead and send me a thing, a note telling me that it didn't work up quite right. But that's something you might want to look at. If your star is not covered by the net fill, check that out. Just go ahead and select your outline. Make sure that our height is at 10. Okay, now I would want to add, again, I'm not doing the ornaments on here because I don't want to smush my puffy tree. So over here under toolbars it says create crystal shape. If you click onto that, we have now a crystal attached to our cursor, but it's not really the size I want it to be. If I go up under here, I can change the size, and I did size 20 when I was doing my tree, and then I just clicked, and I really tried to keep these in the same places that I put them on my first tree. When you're done, go up under rectangle selection. Rectangle selection is going to be your friend because that will tell things that you're done working with them. Just kind of keep that in mind. That kind of finishes things off for you. So that's the Trapunto block. It's really quite easy to do. And I will go through when we're done the steps on putting all this together as well, so don't worry about that. Now the stitch and flip. Let me go back to my PowerPoint a second here and show you you know, apparently I went ahead. All right. I did have computer issues earlier, so apparently it put this stuff in the wrong order. So let me show you how you would stitch this tree out, as long as we're here. All right, so we've got our Trapunto tree done. We take it to the embroidery machine. We're going to hoop a piece of poly mesh stabilizer and a piece of our fabric. If you only want to do this on a stabilizer, that'll work as well, because you're not going to see the backing on it, so your choice. You're going to have those hooped, I laid a piece of high loft batting on top of the hooped stabilizer and fabric, and then on top of that I laid a piece of my white fabric for the top of my wall hanging. So those are just laying on top. So when you put this on your embroidery machine, you want to slow your machine down as slow as you can go, because what you don't want is for all of this stuff to start shifting on you. So I went slow. I kind of held it in place, and then I watched it to make sure that nothing was getting puckered or moved. And it really, because it's such a simple shape, it worked out really well, and I didn't actually have to even hold it. You can see that I just kind of left it laying on here. And this piece was, I think, size 12 by 12. That's in the instructions anyway. It was big enough that if it wasn't centered, it wasn't going to be a big deal. It was going to still end up, the block would be all together where it needed to be. Then you're going to go ahead and stitch the tree. Don't do any more than just the outline of the tree at this point. Then you're going to carefully remove the hoop from the machine and lay it on a flat surface. Do not take the fabric out of that hoop. You need to leave that in there. And then just start on one side of the tree. Just pull that top fabric, fold it back over the tree so that it's out of the way, and you can actually see the batting right up to the tree. You want to trim away the excess batting that is sticking out from that tree. Get as close to the stitching as you can without cutting your fabric, so you want to be very careful doing this. You'll see that it's just really not that tough. Just make sure that that top fabric stays out of the way. Then you're going to, when you finish one side, turn your hoop, do the other side. You're going to go all the way around your tree that way. So the only part you have left that's got puffy is under the tree. Now, when I did the tree trunk, I did that a little bit differently. I didn't put any batting under it because the tree trunk is going to come like maybe from like right here. You would not be able to trim that batting away right up to this corner. So to not end up with that issue, I went ahead, trimmed my batting all the way around my tree, then put that back on the embroidery machine and stitched the trunk lines. Then I stopped and I stuffed from the bottom. Remember, we didn't finish off the bottom of that tree trunk, we just did the sides. So I'm sorry, this is a little blurry, I couldn't get a better picture of it. So what I did was I just stuffed some batting up under here. Don't push a ton of it under there, and make sure that, see, my lines are ending here. I wanted to have the batting a little bit inside of where this ends, so that when you're doing the outline, remember the outline is going to actually stitch inside the ends of that line. So you want to push that batting in there. And I did make sure that I pushed it up into the corners pretty good. It doesn't have to be stuffed real tight. Just get some batting up there for the fluff. And then after that, then I went ahead and stitched the net fill, and I think you can see it in this picture. I like the look of that net fill. I thought that really looked great with the tree. And then you stitch the garland. Now, this all looked great at this point, but when my block was finished and I set it next to the other block, it didn't have any color, and the other one was full of color. So I needed to add a little bit more to it. So that's when we get creative. I grabbed some glitter threads that I had, and I used my zipper foot, and I stitched close to the tree and tried to stay on that line that would be right next to the tree here. And I went all the way around the tree with a green glitter thread. Then I went down both sides of the tree trunk with a brown glitter thread, and just so that it had even more color, I took my open toe foot and I took 5 strands of the green glitter thread and kind of twisted them together as I went. So I started at the bottom of my garland, and I just followed my lines, and I went up the tree. Actually, this is the top here, but I started at the bottom. You could start wherever you want, but I just laid it on top of this stitch, and I ran my open toe foot right along there so I could see and make sure I got it covered. And I used a 3-step zigzag, which is one of my favorite stitches for a lot of things. I don't know why, but I love that stitch. And then when I got to the corner, I stopped and pivoted and just continued on. And that just really gave it a lot. I mean, it looked a lot better with those blocks. And then, of course, I added my glitz. Remember the ornaments that we created? Now, when I did those, I don't want to use an iron and flatten all of my puffiness. So if you have one of the glitz applicators that you can put on, that works. Or I used one of my small little irons, and then I just put the tip of it onto the crystal, and that actually worked out really well. It melted the adhesive on the back of the crystal, but it didn't spread onto my batting and flatten my batting. So it was pretty easy to do, and it was a lot of fun, and I really did like it when it was done. The third block is my flip and stitch block. So everything on here was embroidered except for I added, when I was done, the decorative stitch that goes over where all my blocks or my fabrics are added together. And that was pretty easy to do. That's done with a decorative stitch off of the machine. It's I think I used a metallic thread on that. Or you could just use a silver, something that shows up really good. And in this case, your stitch and the ditch foot works good because you can put the flange in that foot right in the seam lines and follow that perfectly. So to do this, if you'll look closely, I don't have a lot of contrast between the layers, but you can see this is really dark. Then we have one that has these, different prints for each one of these 6 areas on here. We start at the bottom, so the first thing that's going to stitch is our tree trunk. Then I have you stitch down this white piece of fabric here, this one here, then the tree, starting at the bottom, working our way up. We get up here to this one, then we add this white fabric here to the left side of the tree, and then the last one is this side of the tree. So I do have a pattern that you'll see in the instructions that show you, right here it is. Whoops, moved back on me. You can see that when you're working with paper piecing or this type of thing, you want to actually plan ahead so that you will know which ones to put down when. So again, I started with the brown down here for the trunk, and I labeled them here so you would know why when we're putting our stitch lines in, why I did it in what order. So all of this kind of tells you what order we're doing it, so that if you get confused, you'll have that. So if you build your own, because they are easy to make, you'll want to have your pattern and then number them. If I tried to put the white down first, it wouldn't work when I was going to put these in. So there's a reason that you do it that way. All right, so let's go back to the software and let me show you how we're going to create this. So our Trapunto was the last one we did. I need to open up our basic shape the first one that we did. So I'm going to go up here where it says open, and I can now get my tree block again. Open it up. And now I have 3 tabs. I have my decorated tree, I have my Trapunto, I have my tree block. So we're going to select all because I'll show you in a minute. So we're going to go to Edit, Select All, and I want to change this to all one color. So again, look at the bottom. You can see we have 4 colors. Remember, we have the tree trunk, we have the tree, we have the garland, and we have our outline for the block. Each one of those is a different color. Well, I'm going to change that and turn them all into one color. So I'm just going to pick a color, and they are outlined. You can see that because there's pencils in the top. So I'm going to click in the top left-hand corner of that. So now we only have one color. That's our pattern, so to speak. And I want to move this up a little on this one as well because I will want to stitch that star again at the top. And this did come in at the right size, so I don't know what happened to our Trapunto, what happened there, but we're not going to worry about that. So I just want to move this up a little bit. And again, cover the bottom of our tree. Oh, that's right. Remember, they're all attached. So let me ungroup this for a moment. Oh, I made them all one color. All right, let me move this up just a little bit here. All right, so now I will have room now for my star at the top of the tree. Okay. So now I want to save this again. So we're going to go up under Save, Save As, and we're going, or File Save As, sorry, and we're going to name this Flip and Stitch, or Stitch and Flip actually, because you're stitching first and then you're flipping. I always want to say it the other way, and then save. Okay. Now we're going to start with a trunk. Remember that in our pattern that had the 1 in it. So we want to start with the trunk. And I just want to go up here, and I'm going to click on Copy and Paste. This is, the pasted one is directly on top of the original one. I want to change the color. And this is going to be, the one that I just did is actually going to stitch my brown fabric down for the tree trunk. So we only need that tree trunk. So we've changed the color. Now let's go to our auto sequence control because I want to open up the sequence bar here so I can see what I've got going on. So let's click onto that, click on Advanced, click on OK, and now we can see that we have our tree, we have our garland, we have the block, we have our original tree trunk, and then we have the copied one that I just put on top of it. Now we're going to go to Create Outline Shape, and we're going to use this a lot. This one here, we do a lot of creating lines because each line is going to stitch down a fabric for our block. So Create Outline Shape, I'm going to come over here and I want to, let me zoom in a little bit more so that you can see a little better. I'm going to click right up above, a little bit above our line there, come down here, hold my Shift key down again, and click. On each one of these, because all my lines are straight, I'm going to be holding my Shift key down every time I place a node. And then we're going to right-click, Rectangle Selection, and we're going to change our color. So we're going to change color a lot. And I didn't find when I went to stitch this out that I was confused, because it is a process. I'm putting them in the order that I want them to stitch when I'm done. All right, so what that one that I just put in there is going to do, the copied one is going to stitch down the tree trunk. This one that I just did is going to stitch the white fabric to the brown fabric. So, and I think I have slides that is going to, I do. So I'll go through that as we're done. This one actually will sew that to the brown. Now we have that down there. We need a line now to, when we fold our fabric back over that seam to hide the seam allowances, it's going to be over this way. I wanted a stitch that would hold that in place. So we're going to now go ahead and we're going to go back to our Create Outline Shape. We're going to click, and this time I want to be in this corner here, but I want it to be on this line for the bottom of the tree. Hold the Shift key, click, right click to tell it I'm done, rectangle selection, and then change the color again. And I keep moving this way on my color bar because I want an unused color every time. All right, so now we have that. So we would have now, at this point, we'd have our tree trunk and we'd have a piece of white fabric stitched down to the left of our tree trunk. Now we're going to make to the right of the tree trunk. So we're going to now go back to Create Outline Shape. We're going to, again, up here, Shift key down here, right click, rectangle selection, change the color. Click. We're going to click there, Shift key, click, right click, rectangle selection, change color. So you can see that you can actually get going on a rhythm here. That's why you need your pattern, so you know which ones to do. Now, I would now have tree trunk and both sides of that done. I now need my first green color of fabric, so I'm going to, I have seam allowances going up here. And sometimes if your fabrics, like I use scraps a lot, when I use my scraps, I want to make sure that when I flip it over, it's going to cover every bit of the area it needs to cover. So I'm ready for the green. I would make my line, again, all the way across this time. So we want to go Create Outline Shape. We're going to click, hold the Shift key, click, right click, rectangle selection, change color. Now, this time our fabric would go, because it would be right now looking wrong side up, and I would have it just over the line here, even with the white and the brown seam allowance. Flip it up this way, and if you wanted to trim your seam allowance now, you can actually feel this line, at least I could feel it through my fabric. So I could trim 1/4 of an inch or whatever you want there. It's not going to, as long as it's covered, you're good. So we would continue up. We would next do this line here, and then after that we do this line here. When we're done with that, we would do this side. Done with that, this side, and then you would do all the way around the block. And that would be all of our pieces that we would need on our tree. We would again be able to copy and paste our star and ornaments, because we're going to use both in this one here. So if you went back to our Decorate Tree tab, then we could now select not only the star, but if I hold my Control key down, I could grab those as well. And if I zoom out, you'd be able to see. Remember, because we had combined all the ornaments into one? So now we have all of it, the star and the ornaments. I'm going to go to Copy, go back to my Stitch and Flip tab, and click on Paste. And just that easy, they're in the exact same spot that they were on the first tree that we put. So I like that because everything is uniform. It all ends up exactly where I wanted them to. So it really works out well. And then you'd be ready to stitch that down. So let me go back to the PowerPoint. And I like, when I'm choosing my fabrics to do something like this, I've got so many scraps. I have boxes of scraps. Do you think I could find any of those boxes? Nope. But I did dig out all my fat quarters, and I laid them out, kind of stacked them, and I did, you know, I chose all the green Christmassy type fabrics first of all, laid them all out on a cutting table, and I found that if I layered them, and I did take pictures, so I had a number of different combinations and different order of them, went to my computer, looked them over, and kind of decided that I liked this look better than the other ones that I had done. So you can do a lot. You can do a lot with a camera. It really kind of, when you can step back and maybe come back later and look again, that really helps to choose, you know, what you're going to do. So this is the process that I went through when I was stitching this out. The first color was, remember how we had taken the basic tree that we used on everything? We changed all the colors to one. So the first color that stitched out was my pattern. It has the whole block on there, so I can build and I can see exactly where things are at and what is going to come. So when I put my brown fabric over the tree trunk on here, I could actually see, make sure that it was covering that whole thing, and I made sure that it was at least 1/4 of an inch outside of that line. So because we can see it here and it's going to be the first one, we want the wrong side down over this place here. The rest of them are all going to be with the right side down. So the first one needs to be with the right side up. You can see here I did find one scrap of brown. So I put that down, and I like to use all my scraps, and I made sure that it covered those lines. I was not going to come up short anywhere. Stitched my lines, and remember how they just stitched these straight lines? And that's how my tree trunk looked. So I trimmed around, made sure I had them, and when I'm trimming, I just peeled this part back over itself so I could see where the line was, and then kind of scooched it back over so that when I cut the line, I had myself 1/4 of an inch. So it might be easier for you to do it a different way. You know, it's up to you. So once we trim it, then we're ready to lay our white fabric with the right side down over our tree trunk. And you want to test this out though, because this piece was a long piece that I had. Obviously I found 2 scraps. I wanted to make sure that this kind of lined up with my brown seam allowance, and before I stitched it down, I pulled this over to make sure that it was going to cover this line all the way across, because sometimes I've been known to put them down crooked and stitch them, and then when I put it down I have to unstitch that area. I know you've never done that, but I do a lot of unstitching. I'm really good at it, so if you ever need anything done like that, give me a shout. I'm good. Okay, so we stitched it down. You can see that here. I flipped it over then along the seam line to make sure, you know, that everything's good. And then remember how we had built another stitch to hold that in place? I didn't really worry about my seam allowances here or here, because when I'm all done, it's going to be trimmed 1/4 of an inch outside of our block line, remember? So don't worry about the outside edges, it's all on the insides. All right, so to get this nice, you can use your fingernail to kind of press that in place. If you have one of those little wooden irons, which I have 2 of them, I don't know where they're at, they would have really come in handy for this, because that would give that a nice finished edge. I'm not going to take when I'm doing this, I'm not taking that hoop out and taking it to the iron each time that I flip a fabric over. So I found that my fingernail did just as good a job when I needed it to. Then we're ready to do the other side of the trunk. So again, we would line up the seam allowance over here. Our fabric would actually be right side down over the trunk going this way. Seam allowance is even. We're going to stitch that line and flip it over and go ahead and stitch that down. Now if I had too much fabric up here at the top edges, I would trim that down to 1/4 of an inch all the way across. So it's stitch, flip, trim, stitch, flip, trim as you go along, or stitch, trim, and flip, depending on where you're at. All right, so once you have that down, then we know our first green fabric has to be over that seam allowance, because this is where that's going to stitch. Remember, it's going to stitch right across, all the way across our tree, covering the seam allowances of the white fabrics and the trunk. We're going to lay it down over that line. I actually have them, the seam allowances even. It will stitch then right across here, and then I just actually cut mine down this way first, and I didn't that way, flipped it up, and then I could feel where that line was, and I just trimmed. And it doesn't matter if it's a nice trimmed even edge, because it's going to be covered anyway. So you want to trim here, and I did trim out here a little bit too, although this edge can be trimmed later all at once before you put this fabric down. So once you get that far, then you're ready to flip that fabric up and go on to the next block, and you're going to go all the way up your tree. So this one would be flipped up. Your next green fabric would be even edges here, seam allowances. Stitch that line, flip that fabric up, trim, and then again put your fabric down, your next green fabric here. You're going to have your seam allowances even again here, and stitch that down, flip that up, and you're going to do that all the way up your tree. Now you can see I'm almost done here. This is another one that I've done here. It's going to be flipped up, and I've only got 2 more to go. And this is, I've gotten all the green ones done. When I got this far, I went ahead and trimmed my seam. Well, actually, I didn't have a whole lot of seam allowance or fabric left on this side, so I laid my fabric down here and did the stitch, and then I trimmed them both together. So it's kind of your choice on how you do that. You just want to make sure you have enough seam allowances underneath to hold it in place. And then this side was the last one that went down. When you have them all here, then the outline of the block is stitched. And when you do this, make sure, because the first one I did, I flipped it up and there wasn't enough fabric to reach all the areas. I think it was this fabric here, because this one here, by the time I cut this out of my block was getting kind of weird. So you want to definitely test to make sure that your fabric is going to cover all the areas. So then when this is done, you're going to stitch that all the way around your the outline all the way around that block. Then remember, you can use that stitching line to put your ruler on and trim 1/4 of an inch to the outside of that line all the way around your block, and then it is squared up perfectly. Now at this point I went ahead and cut my strips, my green strips, to go around my blocks. I went ahead and stitched those on all 3 blocks, and actually, I'm sorry, before I did that, I added that decorative stitch to this block here. Once I took it out of the machine here and out of the hoop, I took it over to my machine because I thought, oh, it needs a little bit more. So that was when I chose my decorative stitch, and I just stitched it right over all these lines all the way up, and I really did like that look a lot. This one showed the difference in the fabrics a little bit better, but I liked the added glitz to my block. And I'm sorry, before you even take that out, remember we're going to stitch the star and the ornaments on it as well. But you'll get that in the instructions. And once you've got the green borders on all of them, then I laid them in the order that I wanted them, and I put the Trapunto block in the center. And I did that because it had less color than the other 2, and I thought that balanced it out a little bit better. Yours might show up really well. You might, you know, it's up to you on how you want to do them. These blocks also could be done into a pillow, you know, throw on your couch and whatever, and that would go really well with it as well. So we do the green around, then you're going to go ahead and put the red around. Now when I did this, I only put 1 strip of red between the blocks. So on the top one, I did all the way around. I actually did all the way around on the bottom one as well. And then the middle one, I did the green right to the red. So these strips are, it tells you exactly how to do it. So actually I did these strips and then did the green to it. And then on the, when I was done putting the top together, then I placed I added the batting and the backing. So to the top of my wall hanging, I laid the backing and put those right sides together, batting on the wrong side. I stitched all the way around this. You could add a boarding if you'd border to yours if you'd rather do it that way. I just really wanted to, I had enough borders. It was growing too big for my wall. So I stitched all the way around it, and I left a 3-inch opening in the bottom so that I could turn it right side out. And then I just made sure that my edges were nice and crisped up, and I pressed it really well all the way around the edges. And then I just top stitched really close to the edge to close up that opening in the bottom. You could, if you wanted to, top stitch all the way around it. It's kind of up to you. I didn't do that. I didn't really need to once I pressed it, and it's not like it's going to be, you know, used like a pillow would. It's just a wall hanging, so it's not like somebody's going to be handling it a lot. Now when I got that far, I was ready to quilt the layers together. And I chose, I don't remember what design I chose. Let me, all right, there's some Artistic design collections, and I used, from the design collections, I used the Expressions of Texture by Leah Day, and she has a poinsettia, or poinsettia, depending on how you say it, design on there that I thought worked perfectly with this wall hanging. So to do that, I hooped just my wall hanging. There is no other stabilizer in there. For an open design, an open quilting design, you have enough stabilizing going there. So I hooped it, the corner of it, and you can see I was careful to not try to hoop over glitz. If you are more comfortable waiting till the end, you can put your crystals on. No, you can't. Do it right away, because otherwise you're going to have crushed batting there too. But can you see the design in the corner here? Your machine probably has where you can trace the area that it's going to stitch, and I used that to make sure that I had it positioned exactly where I wanted it positioned. And I measured down, and I don't even remember now how, it depends on the design you're going to choose for yours, but to make sure that this side and this side of your wall hanging match, you will want to make sure you mark where you want the center of the design. So after I found where I wanted the first one, I measured, and then I used, I put a little mark where I wanted the center of that design to be on the other side, so they would match. And then you just stitch through all those layers, and that holds your layers together. And I did the top block, the paper piecing one, and I did the applique one. I did not do the block with the Trapunto, because remember, we did a net fill on that. So I thought that that really would be a little too much for that. And then when I was done, I did add the glitz to the Trapunto one, carefully. And you can see that this, I did make a template with my cutter, and then you put the crystals into the template, and then you add your transfer tape on top of that, and that transfer tape will hold all those crystals in place, so you can put it right over where you want it, because you can see through it, and then you press it in place. And anytime I press, the transfer tape can take the heat, but I don't really want my iron with all that heat going on the rest of it. So what I usually do is just, I put a pressing cloth over it to protect everything else. And that is how you do the crystals. Very, very easy and quick. And what doesn't look wonderful with crystals? I don't know what I'd do without them. They just add so much sparkle and glitz and all of that. So that is how I did all of those blocks and put it together. I know it's a lot, but you'll get, like when you're doing the paper, the stitch and flip one, you'll find that you get into a rhythm. And once you've done a few of those lines, you don't even have to look at the instructions anymore. You'll find that you can just lay those lines down and know the steps to get to the next line. So give it a try. You may decide that you really like it. It's very accurate. I've done a lot of the paper piecing, and I enjoy it. I like it. It's very, very accurate. But I also like doing things in a hoop. So for me, it's just kind of fun to see what I can create. And I did that from, I didn't have a pattern when I started. I made my own. I just decided, okay, I want this tree. I want it to be a simple shape, something that can be created easily for other people, and use some of the functions of the software that maybe they haven't used. Maybe you didn't know that you could change the shape of the trapezoid into that triangle by just changing the slant. So this software is so powerful, and there's so many things it can do that really we're just tapping into it. So we just need to keep working on it and finding out more things that we can do with it and just have fun with it. So don't forget that to check with your local artistic dealer. They can give you even more information, and they can teach you more things about it. If you don't have the software yet and you're interested in it, it's a great software. It can do a lot of different things. So go check with that dealer and ask all about it. And they can also help you probably with the cutters and that kind of things too if you're not familiar with those. And our software transfers our designs that we create. That crystal thing, I can send it right from my software to that cutter. I don't have to try to figure out how to get it into that cutter. It will cut fabric, crystals, it'll cut paper. I can design all kinds of different things for scrapbooking or quilting or embroidery. Just do a lot of different things, transfer it right to those cutters, and it's just so much fun, just so much. Now, the project will be available later this week. I have a few more things to finish up on it, and then that will be done. And remember, there's a lot of different parts. So part 1 is going to be that basic tree and the applique. Part 2, I think, is it's the Trapunto. And then part 3 is going to be the other thing. And then there's part 4 because we have to put it together. So take one part at a time if you don't have a lot of time, and just go ahead and learn how to do these things. You're going to love it. So the projects are available. If you go to this link right here, it's http://content.janome.com/index.cfm/project center/webinar. With that, go to janome.com and you can find projects on there for not only the artistic software but a number of other things as well. So it is in there and you can find it. I know you can. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, we would love to hear them. And go to Janome Webinar at janome-america.com. And we'll see you next time. Thank you again.